Okay, it's just a day later. So it's Saturday, February 4th, 2023, and I lied. In my last video, I said that I would in my last video, I said that my next video would explain how my dharmic understanding of God succeeds in resolving the tension between the one and the many. And I'm still going to do that. But I'm doing another video now on the Trinity. And because, believe it or not, there's a little bit more to cover. And I may do one more real short one on the Trinity before I do the one that I promised. So let's go ahead and get into it. You don't just have an issue reconciling the uncreated God with the created world in Christianity, due to the fact that Christianity claims there's an absolute separation between the two. For those who want to see my arguments on that, you can go back and look at any number of videos I've done recently, and also some in the more distant past, where I specifically critique the doctrines of the virgin birth and the hypostatic, the doctrine of the hypostatic union of Christ, which claims that Jesus was both fully God, 100% man, and that somehow the two natures, divine and human, are reconciled. So they don't just struggle with that. And they don't just struggle with explaining how the three persons are co-equal in every way, while simultaneously positing that the Father from all eternity caused the other two persons, the Logos and the Holy Spirit. They have a third problem, which is what I'm getting into here. My contention is that Christianity does not succeed in solving the problem of the one and the many. And the reason for that is quite simple. You have the divine essence on the one hand, which is the principle of oneness without distinction. And on the other hand, you have the category of hypostasis or person, which is the principle of plurality. Because in Christianity, and it's very odd to think about it when you put it this way in the following terms, in Christianity, it is not possible to have a single person without there being three coexisting, co-eternal, co-equal persons who have always been in communion. So the principle of, the category of hypostasis or person is intrinsically plural. And the category of the divine essence is intrinsically oneness without difference. So how you unite these two things is the special challenge that Christianity faces. And I'm not just suggesting, I'm asserting that this distinction between the essence and the persons, or between person and nature, is a binary just as absolute, just as irreconcilable, just as extreme in its separation as the difference between, due to the doctrine of creation ex nihilo, between the absolute separateness of the uncreated God and the created world. oddly enough, what happens is that the Father ends up being used, the person of the Father ends up being used as a tool to sort of reconcile essence and person. He's not just used to explain the origin of the Trinity of persons in terms of hypostatic origination. Because he is unique, he plays the unique role of being the principle of unity among the collective persons within the Trinity. For that very reason, he ends up being used, whether consciously or unconsciously, as the means whereby to unite nature and person, or essence and person. Because in that he is one or singular in his person and is seen as the source of the other two persons, he has something in common with the nature because of the oneness. He seems to be closer to the principle of oneness than the other two persons, or closer to the nature, so to speak. And so that is the logic behind using the Father the way he is used there. And that's another look. That's kind of another angle from which to look at how the persons of the Logos and the Holy Spirit end up becoming subordinated to the Father. You don't just see that they are subordinate by the fact that they are eternally caused by the Father. You see that the underlying logic of it is that the Father is implicitly seen as being closer to the divine nature, which is why he more particularly or more uniquely represents it, or is seen as the source of the Godhead. And so implicitly that would make the Son, or the Logos, and the Holy Spirit quote unquote further from the nature, which would make them quote unquote less than the Father. So oddly enough, the Father within the Trinity plays a role as sort of go-between between the Trinity of persons and the divine essence, that the doctrine of the incarnation of the Logos plays very, very similar role as the one the Logos plays in seeking to unite the uncreated with the created, God with the world. So, if you've listened to most of my videos or all of my videos, you'll now know that there are three overarching irreconcilable problems in Christian theology, particularly in the realm of Trinitarian theology and Christology. You now have this unsuccessful attempt to use the Father as the principle which unites the impersonal oneness without differentiation of the essence and the plurality of the hypostases. You see the irreconcilable nature of trying to posit an incarnation of the second person of the Trinity as a reconciler of uncreatedness and createdness, or God and the created world. And as a result, you see the impossibility of uniting creation and the uncreated within the person of Christ himself. And we saw that with regard to the uncreated energies. You know, the Orthodox Christians say that all things are interpenetrated by God. All created things are interpenetrated by the principles or logoi of the uncreated divine energies. But created things in and of themselves are still intrinsically mortal by their very nature and utterly separate from God. So within created things themselves, you have a duality, an absolute unbridgeable duality between the thing itself and that with which it is interpenetrated by the divine. Then you have within the Trinity itself the unbridgeable duality between the divine essence and the hypostases. And then you have the unbridgeable and irreconcilable separation between God and the world. Those are the three issues that render the doctrine of the Holy Trinity and the doctrine of the hypostatic union in Christianity unfit for belief. So that pretty much sums that one up, and I'm signing out now, and I'll get this uploaded as soon as possible. Thanks. Have a great weekend.